In his 2009 book, America's Prophet, Bruce Feiler, an author and journalist, writes, "For 400 years, one figure stands out as the surprising symbol of America. One person has inspired more Americans than any other. One man is America's true founding father." Any guesses? I heard Martin Luther King. It is a good guess. Any other guesses? Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, all great guesses. Any others? Washington? Oh yes, all fantastic guesses. But not what Feiler points to. When he says one man is America's true founding father, and his name is Moses. He continues to write, "Even a cursory review of American history indicates that Moses has emboldened leaders of all stripes, patriot and loyalist, slave and master, Jew and Christian, fat cat and communist." And in his book, Feiler traces the influence of this biblical figure who makes his entrance into our story in this week's parashah all the way back to the first non-native people to arrive on this continent. From the Pilgrims to prominent historical figures like Washington, Lincoln, as well as Harriet Tubman, and even Superman, Moses has served as the most frequent and most powerful reference point for shaping the stories that define us as Americans. Even the Great Seal of the United States, according to some of our founding personas, should have been a depiction of Moses leading the Israelites across the Red Sea. If it had been up to Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, and John Adams, the Great Seal would have been, and I quote directly, "Pharaoh sitting in an open chariot, a crown on his head and a sword in his hand, passing through the divided waters of the Red Sea in pursuit of the Israelites, raised from a pillar of fire in the cloud, expressive of the divine presence and command, beaming on Moses, who stands on the shore, extending his hand over the sea, causes it to overwhelm Pharaoh." And at the bottom of this seal, they suggest the motto, "Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God." This proposal was eventually rejected, and the bald eagle instead was adopted as our Great Seal, which I just want to mention was much to Benjamin Franklin's chagrin, who he thought that a turkey was actually a, quote, much more respectable bird, and described the bald eagle as, quote, "a bird of bad moral character." Excuse me, I'm getting a little off topic here. Now, it may come as a surprise to many that Moses figures so prominently in our national narrative. We may wonder, rightfully so, why that is. And particularly on this Shabbat, when we read of Moses' early life, and as we stand, as I've mentioned, on the precipice of a day honoring the most powerful Moses figure of the 20th century, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we might take a closer look at the fabled teacher of our people, both his strengths and his shortcomings. So what do we know of Moses? Of course, most of us are likely familiar with the extraordinary circumstances of his birth, the results, I should mention, of many miraculous moments of civil disobedience on the part of his mother, Yocheved, the midwives Shifra and Puah, the daughter of Pharaoh, and of course, Moses' sister, Miriam. But what of the person of Moses, his character, his personality? To be honest, there's not a whole lot that clues us in. As Feiler notes, instead of a domineering and heroic character, Moses is presented as a largely passive, even reactive figure who is clearly subservient to the primary actor in the story, God. But there are moments that give us a little bit of insight. In chapter 2 of Exodus, we read, "Sometime after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his kinsfolk and witnessed their labors. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his kinsmen. He turned this way and that, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. This is, of course, the act that leads Moses to flee his Egyptian home. A few verses later, we read, "Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock, but shepherds came and drove them off. Moses rose to their defense, and he watered their flock." From each of these moments, we see that Moses is a man of principle, with a strong sense of defending the vulnerable, even if his methods are a bit misguided at times. Later on, when God speaks to him in the wilderness of Midian, Moses asks, "Mi anochi, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and free the Israelites from Egypt?" Elsewhere, Moses pleads with God, "Please, O my Lord, I have never been a man of words. Lo ish dvarim anochi, either in times past or now that you have spoken to me, your servant. I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." From these moments, we can see that Moses, like many of us, struggles with confidence in himself and his abilities, and maybe even had a speech impediment of some sort that made God's request and demand of him all the more difficult to accept. Moses is not a mighty warrior, a gifted orator, a paragon of perfection, as we might expect of a central hero in our narrative. He is instead a humble and at times timid servant, unsure of his abilities and weighed down by self-doubt. It may be difficult for us to truly see Moses as a hero. As Thomas Ehrlich and Ernestine Fu write in a 2015 article for Forbes, quote, "We now demand perfection from our heroes, and when they fail, as surely they must, if perfection is the standard, we reject them with disdain. When we see that they have feet of clay, we not only push them off their pedestals, we fail to heed the lessons that can be learned from their flaws and mistakes." End quote. This modern desire for perfection in our heroes is in stark contrast to Jewish tradition. It does not take a scholar to look at our sacred texts and see that our central figures, our heroes, from Abraham to Miriam to King David, are all in some way flawed. Yet there is still so much that we can learn from them, so much inspiration we can draw from their lives and their accomplishments. As Ehrlich and Fu write, quote, "Yet heroes are important in every walk of life, from athletics to politics to the arts. When they achieve the extraordinary, they spur us to higher expectations for ourselves. Heroes embody courage, determination, and superb abilities, though they are human beings, just like us." We need heroes because heroes show us the best of humanity, encouraging us to find those unique gifts that only we can give to the world. Heroes show us that no matter where we come from, the color of our skin, who we love, that all of us have a voice that could change the world for the better. This weekend, we all pay tribute to a great American hero, our own modern-day Moses. Like Moses, Dr. King was not perfect. He was, as we all are, human. And yet his life and his work show us what is possible when we dare to dream of a better, more equitable society, and what can be accomplished when we join together in collective action, the power that one voice joined with others can have. Once, the Hasidic rabbi Zusia came to his followers with tears in his eyes. They asked him, "Zusia, what's the matter?" And he told them about his vision. "I learned the question that the angels will one day ask me about my life." The followers were puzzled. Zusha, you are so pious, you are scholarly and humble. You have helped so many of us. What question about your life could be so terrifying that you would be frightened to answer it? Zusha replied, I have learned that the angels will not ask me, why weren't you a Moses leading your people out of slavery? And that the angels will not ask me, why weren't you a Joshua leading your people into the promised land? Zusha sighed. They will say to me, Zusha, why weren't you Zusha? As we honor the life and legacy of Dr. King, may we learn from his courage and moral fortitude in the face of hatred. And may his example, just like those of Moses and Miriam and so many others, serve as shining examples of the best that humanity can be. They are heroes and teachers, not because we should be them, but because they inspire us to be the best version of ourselves. And so, in the words of Dr. King, spoken in this very city in April of 1968, let us rise up tonight with a greater readiness. Let us stand with a greater determination. And let us move on in these powerful days, these days of challenge, to make America what it ought to be. We have an opportunity to make America a better nation. May this Shabbat and may this week ahead be an opportunity to feel the inspiration that comes to us from our heroes, whoever they may be, and in all of their imperfection. May they galvanize us to envision and work towards a better world, a new promised land, even if we do not get to enter it in our lifetimes. May we find our voice, our unique gift, and may we continue to march on. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will, and we say together, Amen.